Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the emerging trends in government procurement. My name is Erin Jones, and I'm a Senior Marketing Specialist here at Deltek. Our speakers today are Patrick Morrison of Deltek's Washington Management Group and Jim Shanahan of Financial Transaction Services. And at this point, I'm pleased to hand it over to Patrick so he can tell you a little bit more about Washington Management Group.
Great. Thank you, Erin. Jim, you want to go to the next slide for me? Very quickly, Washington Management Group is a niche consulting firm located in Washington, D.C. that specializes in helping clients of all sizes and solutions increase revenue and reduce risk in the government marketplace with a focus on GSA schedule consulting. We've been in business for over 30 years. We have a very strong management and experienced consulting team. We have clients all over the world selling a very broad professional portfolio of services. We work in all 33 different GSA schedules and most of the 8 VA schedules. And as Erin mentioned earlier, Washington Management Group was acquired by Deltek in April of 2011. The three things our clients look to for support is an experience. Having done this for 33 years, there's not much we can run into with clients of any size or solution. Relationships, we have very strong relationships with the folks at GSA, as well as long-term relationships with our clients. And knowledge. The government contract market frequently has new issues, new developments, new rules, and one of our roles is to make sure that our clients stay current, to make sure that they have the right information to make educated business decisions. Jim? This is the Deltek toolkit for government contractors, end-to-end solutions from opportunity identification to proposal submittal and follow-up. Jim? I want to talk briefly a little bit about the GSA Schedules program. It's a government contract program managed by the General Services Administration as well as the Veterans Affairs. Pre-negotiated contracts allow government contractors to supply services and products to the federal government. Again, there's about 33 different GSA schedules, and I believe there's about 8 VA schedules. Each schedule is defined by a service or product, and then within each schedule there are subcategories, or what the government calls SINs, special item numbers, that create greater definition. There's about 10 different acquisition centers across the U.S. for GSA, and the VA schedule centers are all, contracts are all negotiated in Hines, Illinois. In the GSA Schedules program, currently there's about 19,000 contracts with about 12,000 contractors. But bear in mind, there's lots of different ways to do business with the government, and the fastest and least expensive way is through the GSA Schedules program. A little drill down here. GSA schedule has a base period of 5 years with 3 5-year add-ons, so it can go out 20 years. It's for your commercial services and products. From a product standpoint, primarily, it does include a Trade Agreements Act provision, but it does not include a Buy America Act. There's no maximum contract or order value in the Schedules program. At the height of the stimulus bill, the ARRA, if you want to call it that, I did see one go through the Schedules program for over $30 million. You may increase your prices after the first year. You can make additions or deletions to products or services at any time. It is international in scope. We have clients in Australia, Canada, Europe, and as you might be well aware, the GSA Schedules program is used by agencies all over the world as well. It does exclude construction and architect and design services. Those are excluded on purpose. And one of the big advantages that schedule holders will get is they're allowed to upload their GSA schedule information to GSA Advantage. And on the next slide, we'll show you what that looks like. As you can see here, GSA Advantage is a bit like Amazon for government contract buyers. Anybody who has a GSA schedule uploads their information into this database. There are about 11 million line items in GSA Advantage. One of the landing pages I'm showing you here would be if I was a government contracting person, and let's say I wanted to buy a set of night vision goggles, didn't know where to turn. I could go into Advantage, do a keyword search as I've done here, and this is an example of the landing page that shows up. If you look closely up in the right-hand corner, you'll see a shopping cart, again, just like in Amazon. So if I wanted to buy a pair of night vision goggles, I move it to the shopping cart, and then as I go to check out, there's about 260,000 government employees with government-issued credit cards. If I so determined, I could use a government-issued credit card and then go ahead and make the purchase for these night acquisition goggles, just as you would do for, you know, a book or a product through Amazon. Jim? Some numbers on Advantage, just to give you some perspective. About 700,000 registered users. There's about 70,000 e-buy RFQs every year. There's about a little less than $700 million in sales going through Advantage. Again, predominantly product type sales. There are about 842,000 orders placed, and there's about 600,000 searches a day. Anybody can search through Advantage, so including you. So if you're so inclined, obviously just Google GSA Advantage, and you'll land on that page and do some searches as well. And there are about 30 million line items currently in GSA Advantage, and this information has all been provided by GSA and their statistics for fiscal year 2010. And just a broad number here, GSA scheduled revenue in fiscal year 11, which is obviously ended in September of last year, was about $39 billion. The VA schedule revenue is from fiscal year 10. They've just recently made the decision to publicize their information, but all in between GSA and VA schedules programs, it's roughly about $51 billion in revenue.
Okay, this is Jim Shanahan speaking from Financial Transaction Services. We're going to talk about how contractors can grow top-line revenue and profits in a challenging economic environment. And so to cover the agenda of topics, we're going to go through an overview of the economic landscape. We'll talk about the economic result. We'll talk about aspects of what the GSA wants in terms of accountability and transparency, and then how contractors can support this transparency and grow revenue. We'll also then do an overview of the GSA Smart Pay program. We'll look at level 3 technology, which will also include the benefits of it and also PCI DSS compliance. And then we'll finish up with business needs analysis and level 3 examples. So to get started, you know, we all understand that there's budgetary pressures going on right now. There's very large impending budget cuts that are anticipated, even further budget cuts in January 2013. As a result, the government contractors are going to be feeling the pressure to pay attention in 2 areas, and one will be shifting their priorities to focus on those key areas where the government is inclined to invest its resources. And number 2 is to identify additional revenue sources to increase those profit margins. The procurement policy changes that have been studied over the last few years and have come into fold in the last year and a half. There's an area called the GSA FSSI, which is the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative. They are being instituted to increase efficiencies and offer savings around the government's purchase of common goods and services. And this is really a slide that's taken right off the GSA website under the Federal Acquisition Service area. And it shows the 4 areas that are in focus. They are reduction in cost per unit, with all the elements below that, change in consumption and volume, which picks up demand management and specification review. The 3rd area is improved operating efficiency, and it covers the areas below that. And then the 4th area is improved focus on socio and economic goals. So there's a big effort to really dig and have a lot more information in terms of how the government is doing business. So strategic sourcing. Again, it's the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiatives. They're being used to help the U.S. administration's effort to reduce procurement spending by $40 billion annually. Ultimately, these initiatives are going to make it more competitive than ever for vendors and agencies, as they will be buying smarter to save money. Reducing government waste. And this is another area that's in focus to the government. And some of the big stories in this area are it's been announced there's going to be an increase in auditors to reduce rising backlogs on recovering taxpayer dollars improperly spent by contractors. And currently the DCAA is seeking to hire hundreds of more auditors to assist in these areas. The government's also pushing to adopt technologies that will reduce the waste in these areas with government resources and prevent instances of fraud and abuse. And then the third area, there's been recent legislation that has been pending in the Senate known as the Data Act. And this will impose a universal reporting requirement for recipients of grants, loans, and contracts to the general public. The economic result of all this is contractors are going to be asked to be more accountable and efficient by saving money and reducing waste and preventing instances of fraud and abuse. Now, the accountability and transparency area, to help drive this accountability, the Office of Management and Budget has made a push for open government. Under this initiative, the executive departments are directed to do three things: to implement principles of transparency, to expand opportunities for citizen participation, and number three, to increase collaborative decision making. So ultimately, by incorporating these three principles of transparency, participation, and collaboration, agencies will be better equipped in becoming more accountable and efficient with saving money by reducing waste and preventing issues of fraud and abuse. So how can contractors then support this transparency and grow their revenue? And the two questions are, how can contractors support agencies' efforts in becoming more accountable? And how can government contractors expect to grow top-line revenue and profits in the current economic climate of declining government spend, procurement policy changes, and increased audits? One effective way to do this simultaneously to increase transparency and grow revenue is to update credit card financial processors to become level 3 compliant. The GSA Smart Pay program is the card that really wants this type of transparency, and it represents almost $31 billion in total spend in FY10. Agencies and organizations received over $325 million in refunds in FY10. Agencies also avoided over $1.5 million in administrative and processing costs because they were using the GSA Smart Pay purchase card. And then agencies and organizations have received over $1.4 million in gross revenue since the start of the GSA Smart Pay program. So it does bring a lot of efficiencies to the government. So some Smart Pay card industry facts. When a purchase card is used by government agencies, such as the GSA Smart Pay card, and is accepted as a payment, level 3 data must be captured and passed along in order to qualify at the best rates through the Visa and MasterCard associations and interchange program. It's called level 3 line item detail, which contains things like item description, quantity, unit of measure, price, discounts, sales tax, in addition to the merchant establishment information. Level 3 transactions will typically reduce cost to process those transactions, which is money saved by the contractors, by as much as 25 to 50%. And these savings can be placed back into the business that is doing business with the agencies, government agencies, and can have a significant impact on the company's margins. So to recap, the benefits of level 3 to the government are accountability and transparency, cost avoidance, leveraging the card for strategic sourcing, and refunds when cards are used. And then to the contractor, it actually means faster funding. There's quite a bit in savings that can be realized. There's certainly increased sales potential, success stories, and then the last thing is this area called PCI DSS compliance. So to touch upon that, the PCI DSS compliance is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, and they follow what we call sound business practices, and that is they're asking all members, merchants, service providers that store, process, or transmit cardholder data to be careful with it and to protect it. And obviously it becomes a sound business practice to do that because it certainly achieves financial best practices by avoiding fraud and clarifying where data is stored. It upholds brand, the company's brand, by adding value to the company's name and increasing customer confidence. And then lastly, it'll avoid investigation and remediation costs and fines that can damage a company's brand and reputation. This is the final benefit to the contractors to achieve these regulations around PCI DSS compliance. So level 3 compliance. Right now, it's either been recommended or required for 3 different areas by the government. There's these POST pilot programs, which have been in effect for a little over a year. POST means point of sale transaction. There's been schedules, Schedule 67, 51B, 581, and FSSI Schedule 70, which require level 3 processing at present. And there are now 4 more schedules that have been selected that will require level 3 processing in later 2013 and 2014. So getting set up to accept level 3 transactions is really very easy. I think there's a misconception out in the marketplace that it's kind of a difficult thing to do. There's really just 3 simple steps to do it. First thing is to determine the type of software that's being utilized to make sure it can actually have a screenshot that can accept level 3 information and then pass it on with the transaction. Number 2 is you need to establish a merchant account with a level 3 processor, and not all processors can do level 3. And then number 3 is start processing level 3 transactions. So it really is not a hard thing to do, and typically there's training involved which helps the client out. Some level 3 examples, and it just kind of gives you just a snapshot of, what are the value components. And we have just 2 companies here that we're showing the examples of. But the previous processor that each company was using was their local bank. There was a gateway that was being employed to do those transactions. And in the first company, it was IC Verify, and the second company, iHoldings Company, was Authorize.net. There was a new system or gateway that was put into place with the first company, and it was called PayFlow Pro, which will actually give the ability to do a level 3 transaction. And in the second company, iHoldings, there was actually the ability to put it into their ERP system, which is the ultimate, is to make it integrated into that. The savings by each of these companies in terms of their processing costs was 38% in the first company and 45% in the second. And then the benefits are, stated there. They're able to do level 2 and level 3 transactions, and level 2 is just a little bit lower level transaction than level 3. We've been talking about level 3 transactions, but it'll do both level 2 and 3. It'll automate to the accounting system. In each case, both companies were PCI compliant, and it really met very good objectives and benefits for both of those companies. So those are just 2 examples. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I think we're going to open it up for questions now.
Yes, thank you.
So Erin?
Just a reminder to all of our attendees, if you do have any questions for our presenters, please use the Q&A pane on your webinar dashboard, and we will address these as they come in. Okay, so Patrick, I'm going to send the first question to you. Why can GSA schedules only be a total of 20 years?
It's not actually a total of 20 years. It's a base period of 5 years with 3 5-year add-ons equaling 20 years. But at the 20-year mark, in the minds of many, including GSA, this is not a renewal or extension. It's a tear down and rebuild or start over. So you can go beyond 20 years, but that's the traditional engagement that GSA looks at.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to send this second question to you. It's also about GSA schedules. Does getting a GSA schedule guarantee that you're going to get government business?
Short answer is no. As I mentioned, I think in the presentation, there's lots of different ways to do business with the government. The schedules program is only one of them. However, we do feel, and our clients feel, that the fastest and least expensive way to do business with the government is through the schedules program.
Okay, thank you. James, I'm going to send the next question to you. It's about submitting level 3 data, and is this a big change for our current process?
No, it is not a big change. It actually puts a larger screen, a larger field onto your computer, and you have to enter some additional areas that are important to the government to have. It takes a few more seconds. You submit the transaction, and you've done a level 3 transaction. So it's just a matter of putting in some software in place to either integrate into your current ERP system or accounting system, and just learn what the new field looks like, put some information in, and send it.
Okay, thank you. Our next question we have, Jim, I'm going to let you start it off, and then Pat, if you have anything to follow up with, that would be great. What are some examples of Schedule 70 use of Smart Pay cards?
I'm sorry,
I can repeat it.
I lost you there. What was it?
What are some examples of Schedule 70 use of Smart Pay cards?
Pat, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Let me answer that one, Jim. Schedule 70, for those that are not aware, is the information technology schedule of the 33 schedules. It's the largest schedule out there, and by most estimates, it accounts for about 40% of the 39 billion or so. So with Smart Pay card use in Schedule 70, obviously it would be for products that are in the information technology market area. Predominantly, again, products, but there are times when people will use services as well, use a Smart Pay card for services as well.
Yeah, and I believe there's going to be more sins that are going to be identified in Schedule 70, if I'm correct, Pat, that are going to be put into the FSI area. At least that's what I've been told by the GSA. So I believe you're going to see more of those areas being asked to submit level 3 data.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, I'm not sure who wants to take this one, maybe you, Pat. Is the GSA Advantage only used for products and not for services?
Great question. Answer is it's predominantly used for products. The most popular aspects, I think, from my past experience for Advantage will be things like Schedule 75, which is office supplies, Schedule 70, which is information technology. Those are the traditional schedules that have relatively high usage within the Advantage program. I think another key distinguisher is that one number, I think it was in one of the slides, that they get about 600,000 hits a day. So it can be used not only for acquisition of products, but acquisition of service as well, but also for research, down select identification. And bear in mind that once somebody in government does determine who they want to involve in a solicitation through eBuy, then they go into the whole electronic solicitation process. The days of the 200-page hard copy solicitation and the manila envelope landing on your desk are rapidly coming to a close. Jim, you can add on, certainly, if you want.
No, I think, Pat, you covered it pretty well.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. Jim, I'm going to send this next question to you as it relates to FTS. Is there any type of extra equipment that needs to be purchased in order to use the virtual terminal?
The answer is no. The virtual terminal is actually kind of a third option that we employ with clients, and that's after we've thoroughly investigated the opportunity to integrate into the company's ERP system. And in almost all cases we can do that, but the second thing that we look to do is at least be into the accounting part of it, because there is certainly integration that can be done there. And then the third thing is the virtual terminal, but that's not really extra equipment. That's a software access that we give to a company, and then they're able to go into a website, a secure website, and they have a protected username and password, and they're able to do their company transactions on that, and it does level 3 transactions, and it has been doing that for quite a few years. But there's no extra equipment there to purchase.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, our next question, Pat, I don't know if you want to start this. With the DoD being hit the most on budget cuts, which agencies do you think that we should look at using Schedule 70?
Oh, in government contracting, there are many simple questions but complex answers, and that's a perfect example of one, Aaron. It's hard to say what agencies. Traditionally, in the past, DoD, VA, and Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the sub-agencies are looked upon more kindly by Congress when it comes to budget. But even within an executive agency like DoD or DHS or VA, there are going to be sub-agencies that are winners and losers, and I think the jury's still out on that. So it's probably fair to give you a non-answer, Aaron.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to send this next one out to both of you. What's the best way to research government spending through GSA schedules?
Let me take that one, Jim. If you Google GSA schedules e-library, you can go into the GSA schedule contractor database. You can look up revenue by GSA schedule contractor. I think there's about 10 or 11 radio buttons. You can also look up GSA schedule by SIN. So there's lots of different ways you can sort the data. GSA has been very good over the last 5-8 years of having this information available to folks. You may also want to consider looking at a organization like GovWinIQ that has lots of this information in a more customer-friendly content. And also a third area might be a Federal Procurement Data System, fpds.gov. One website that everybody should kind of have on their favorites bar is www.usa.gov. This is a website that was a result of a compilation of about 11,000 different web portals about 8 or 9 years ago. So you can go in there and get just about anywhere. So again, that's www.usa.gov.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is about the SmartPay card and if there is a maximum dollar amount that can be used by the SmartPay card.
Well, it varies by, it varies by the holder, doesn't it, Jim?
Yeah, the cards are issued, and there's different levels of authority, but the majority of around 80% of the cards that are issued are for micro purchases, which are $3,000 and below. But there are a number of additional cards that can go well above that, depending on the authority level of the government agency employee and how it was issued to them. There's been transactions as high as $1 million on a GSA SmartPay card, but obviously those are far and few between. But there are the vast majority, 80% of them are $3,000 and below.
Okay, thank you. Pat, this next question is for you. Does every offer submitted to GSA result in a GSA schedule award?
No. A couple things to bear in mind if you're not a schedule contractor and you're thinking about it. GSA has held fairly steady over the last 3 or 4 years with about a 45% rejection rate. The rejection does not mean the negotiations are over. What it does mean is there's been some discrepancy or fault within your offer, and GSA is sending it back to you for a revision and a resubmittal. I think the biggest situation affecting rejection now is there was a time in the past with if your offer was rejected, you would make the necessary changes, resubmit it to GSA, and you'd go back in the same place in line. Now when an offer is rejected and it's sent back and you send it back in, the offer goes at the end of the line. So you're in essence kind of starting over. Most of the rejections, at least the early onset of rejections, are due to administrative errors. So that's part of the reason why I think many companies will look for some outside assistance in putting a quality offer together, much like you would look for outside assistance in doing a tax return.
Okay. Jim, I'm going to send the next question to you. Someone was asking if changing their current process to FTS would affect their relationship with their bank.
That's a question that has been presented quite a few times over the years that we've been involved in the business, and the answer is no. Banks do what they call merchant services, which covers, credit card processing, and they've been doing it as kind of an adjunct to their banking business for a number of years. But we do not change the relationship that a client has with their bank. We just change where that transaction goes, and it still settles back into the same bank, and there's still the same banking relationships that are there, and it doesn't really change anything in terms of what that client or that business is doing with their bank.
Okay, great, thank you. I have another question come in. Pat, I don't know if you can clarify here what happens after the 4th year and whether or not the government will be able to do business with a company via a GSA vehicle.
Aaron, I think what the question may mean is after the base period of 5 years and the 3 5-year add-ons. So as I mentioned earlier, because you get to year 20, that doesn't mean you can't put another offer in to get your GSA schedule renewed. It's basically a start over at that point, and it's not a renewal or an extension.
Okay, thank you. And then it looks like we have one last question here about GSA Advantage and how people can log onto GSA Advantage.
Well, to log on to GSA Advantage, you have to have a GSA schedule and be listed in GSA Advantage. You can go into GSA Advantage and see, what's going on. That was the slide I had of the night vision goggles. That was actually pulled out of the GSA Advantage database. But in terms of actually using GSA Advantage to buy something, that's government contracting or government authorized purchasing personnel.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Aaron.